Yet another late game meltdown from Cat and company. Are we ready to start putting the Nick in panic? Plus, Peter Luger isn't the only beef in New York. Do the Mets need to fix clubhouse chemistry? And Mama Dybantsa has made her decision. BYU superstar AJ Dybantsa declares for the NBA draft, and Yahoo Sports Daily starts right now. I am Caroline Fenton. That is Coley Harvey in for Jason Fitz today, who was the king of New York last night, putting on a Raiders draft party in New York City. Coley, appreciate you for being here, my friend. Happy Friday.
Of course, happy Friday, Caroline. I'm so glad to be here. First time I'm working with you, so hey, we're
I
gonna
know.
make some magic today.
Absolutely, we are going to make some magic, and it was pure and utter magic last night in Pittsburgh for the NFL draft. I mentioned Fitzy at his draft party, and that is exactly where we start this morning. I said happy Friday. It's not just any Friday, it's one of my favorite Fridays on the sports calendar, the Friday after the NFL draft. Fernando Mendoza goes number 1 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. Zero surprises there, but that's kind of where the lack of chaos ended there, Coley. So I will start with you. The biggest surprise last night.
The biggest surprise for me was really the one that we see right there on the screen at number 13. We've got to look at what the Rams ended up doing and kind of reaching to me and going up and getting Ty Simpson in a space where I didn't think that he was quite ready to go. I thought that we were going to see him go possibly late in the first round. I didn't really believe that. I kind of thought we were going to see him go more into the second round at some point. It also seemed as if his family was even bracing for the possibility of going in the second round. His dad basically saying in an interview after Ty was drafted that, they're going to use that as motivation if he slipped past the first round. So that, of course, did not take place. But the Rams basically bargaining their future in having Ty Simpson go there with 13 overall. This is a situation where it's really, really good for Ty. I mean, he's coming into a great situation where he doesn't have to be the guy right now. He's not going to be starting anytime soon. Of course, this is Matt Stafford's team in Los Angeles, but he gets a chance to learn from Stafford for the next year, 2 years, however long it is that Stafford still is going to be the quarterback. And then he can really ease into that role. I do hope that the Rams certainly feel like he is going to be their quarterback of the future, because when you're drafting a player in the first round, especially in this draft class at quarterback, that's what you're saying. You're saying that this is the person that we believe in moving forward. So great situation for him. Felt like a little bit of a reach, a little bit of a surprise to me to see him go that high.
This was the surprise. Yes, there were some crazy moves that happened last night, some mini trades that happened at the top of the draft, a bunch of small trades at the back of the draft. Sure, we saw some guys drop a little bit further than we thought. Ruben Bain falling to the Bucks, I thought was a little bit of a surprise there, but nothing massive until we saw Ty Simpson go at 13. I mean, Coley, we were up here, Fitz and I, having discussions about whether or not Ty Simpson was even a first-round pick, much less a top of the half first-round pick. But to your point, I love this for Ty Simpson. I would have loved the Rams as a landing spot for any of these quarterbacks not named Fernando Mendoza, whether it be a Drew Aller, a Garrett Nussmeier, so on and so forth. But Ty Simpson is walking into a situation with a legitimate Super Bowl contender, with the most brilliant offensive mind in all of football. He has the privilege of being able to sit and wait and learn from the reigning MVP and a guy who has won and seen a lot of football in this league in Matthew Stafford. I think that is the most picture perfect ideal situation for a quarterback, especially a quarterback in Ty Simpson that had a limited reps, only had about 550 attempted passes in college. He needs time to sit and cook. So I love that for Ty Simpson. That's about where it ends for me in terms of why I love this, or what I love about this pick. Because I don't think that it's smart or wise, even for a team like the Rams, who has done such smart drafting and smart roster construction over the last couple of years. I don't think it's smart to start planning for the future with the 13th overall pick, a place where I don't think the Rams expect to pick that high moving forward. With the 13th overall pick, you start planning for the future when you are solidly in a win now window? I don't understand that. It felt like a reach. It felt like a massive swing. It felt like a guy that they could have gotten later in the draft. And it felt like 13 was a prime and premier place for the Rams to address other needs on their roster. I kind of hate this for Matthew Stafford, honestly, Coley. I hate this for Matthew Stafford because he's looking around like Mekhi Lemon was on the board. You couldn't have got me at least a little bit more wide receiver help, especially with Tutu Atwell out the door. I don't think that there's going to be any sort of discomfort with, Ty Simpson coming in, having some competition in the quarterback room. But I do think the opportunity cost there for the Rams was a big question mark for me. But with that being said, I think that is the ultimate surprise of last night. I think that will be one of the number one storylines as we head into some day one reaction. But what about the biggest winner of last night in the draft, in your opinion?
Caroline, I'm just going to have to start singing. Start spreading the news. The teams in New York are the biggest winners of the night. And it's just so weird to me to actually admit that. It feels like it's been so long since there's been anything good for both the Jets and the Giants simultaneously. It seems like usually one or the other has something positive go their way. But you're looking at Arvell Reese right there on the screen, slipping down to number 5. It was really surprising that the Jets did not end up taking him at number 2. So if he had gone at number 2 to the Jets, that's also a win for the Jets. But the fact that the Giants were able to capitalize and get what I thought was the best edge rusher on the board, on the entire draft board. David Bailey, of course, being right there in the mix as possibly being the other favorite to go, of course, going number 2 instead of Reese. But with Reese slipping down to the Giants at 5, that's a good spot for him. Francis Mauigoa gives them a chance to also solidify their offensive line, protecting Jackson Dart, their young quarterback, a little bit better. I mean, and in Mauigoa, this is a player who can rove around the offensive line, not just play there as a guard. He could also swing outside if needed, could even be a center at some point in his career if needed there as well. But Jackson Dart, as I mentioned, is a quarterback who doesn't just stay in the pocket. He also gets outside the pocket. He ended up having to be evaluated for concussions 4 times last season. So because of that, the Giants are basically saying we've got to figure out a way to continue to shore up the protection for him, and using someone who can be athletic, who can be a pulling guard at times, who can get out in space and protect for a mobile quarterback like Dart. So a big win for the Giants, but also the Jets. We mentioned Bailey going there at the top at number 2 overall, but then the Jets go on and have 2 other picks. They make a trade late in the draft as well, in terms of the first round as well, in terms of getting Omar Cooper, the receiver from Indiana, who was catching touchdown passes from Fernando Mendoza, and then also that big tight end in Kenyon Sadiq. So another big win for the Jets there, getting 2 playmakers that Geno Smith can throw to in that offense. And this is a Jets team where these 2 players aren't going to get the Jets, or excuse me, 3 players aren't going to get the Jets over the hump right now. I mean, there's certainly a team that has a lot of growing still left to do, but the Jets are going to be a lot better next year than they were last year, simply because they are addressing a need on defense, a need that can maybe help them get some pressure on quarterbacks, and then on the back end, actually force interceptions and get turnovers, something that they didn't do at all of last year. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what Bailey can bring up front. Also looking forward to seeing what these pass catchers can do in the passing game as well.
I'm so with you on the Giants and the Jets as well. You say they're going to be better this year. I would hope so for Jets fans' sake, because man, is the bar low. But you can start to see the plan in place. You can start to see that unfold. But I'll highlight the Giants. Getting Arvell Reese at 5 feels like an absolute steal. A lot of people viewed Arvell Reese as not just the best defensive player in this draft, but the best prospect and the best player in this draft, a plug and play type of guy. I loved that pick, and the fact that the Giants could just sit back at 5 and have him come to them. Perfect. And then they also get Francis Mauigoa. I find it so satisfying, Coley, when you start to see identities take place and you start to see plans that are vocalized and verbalized in a press conference, and then you see those boxes start to get checked, whether it's in the draft or free agency. You see that plan come to life. Those 2 picks, taking an elite defensive guy and then beefing up the offensive line, giving Jackson Dart some much needed protection, opening up some holes for Cam Scadaboo. I think we're starting to see John Harbaugh's identity and his DNA start to take place on this Giants team. But I also have to give a shout out. And I know nobody wants to hear this. I can hear the collective eye roll from everybody listening behind the screen. I thought the Cowboys taking Caleb Downs at 11 was another absolute steal. And look, they just jumped up one spot. They just swapped with the Dolphins. They just gave it, what, 2 fifth-round picks to do it? Like, no big deal. Smart for the Cowboys, I think, to just go ahead, trade up one spot, get their guy. You heard Nick Saban on the broadcast last night gloating about Caleb Downs. Nick Saban said that Caleb Downs is one of his favorite players that he has ever coached. Remember, Caleb Downs was at Alabama before he transferred to Ohio State. We're talking about Nick Saban. He's coached a lot of good players now. So I loved this pick. I thought Caleb Downs went a little bit later than initially anticipated. So he fills a need. He adds a motor. He adds a really high IQ to a Dallas Cowboys defense that needs it badly.
I was hearing from people just in the days before the draft that Downs was the favorite player for them. He was the best player in the entire draft to them, but most complete athlete. So not just best defensive player, but most complete athlete. So certainly a big steal for Dallas to get him. And then also just real quick on the point that you made about the Giants, I did like that as well. This is a Harbaugh team now that's taking on the identity of that physicality. That's what we always saw from those Ravens teams, a physical team up front. Offensively, and then also just a defense that that kind of flies around with its hair on fire, so to speak. And it looks like we're going to see that out of the Giants to this point.
Let's stick with the Giants then, because I can't do enough gloating about this team. We do the football vibes index on this show, Coley, and I said the vibes were sky high for the Giants going into last season. Season obviously was derailed by injury. I think the vibes continue to be sky high this year because we can't talk about winners without also talking about losers in the draft. So I think some of the losers in this draft are the NFC East quarterbacks because of what the Giants did, because of what that pass rush looks like. You add Arvell Reese, arguably the best player in this draft, with Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau, maybe if he decides to stay in New York or if he does stay in New York. That is absolutely terrifying. I think Jaden Daniels and any of these other NFC East quarterbacks are shaking in their boots at what this Giants defensive front might look like. But on the topic of losers, Coley, who's a loser for you last night coming out of round one?
Man, if I had to pick, and I have a hard time picking a team that was a loser, because to be quite honest, this draft really shook out the way that we all kind of anticipated. We saw pretty much the players and needs fulfilled the way that we were all anticipating going into this. But if I had to pick a player, is a current player in the league, and that's AJ Brown. And, the only reason why I say that he is a loser in this is because now he has officially lost his job as wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, whichever combination of that you want to say there in Philadelphia. Of course, AJ has been pretty vocal about wanting to leave for some time. It was clear that he wasn't getting the pass targets and the pass touches the last couple of seasons. Obviously, very, very talented, supremely talented player. This will ultimately end up in him being a winner because he has now gotten what he's wanted, but also he possibly could go to a contender. He could go to another contender, I should say, to another team that has every bit of an opportunity to get to the postseason as the Eagles do. I would say right now, of course, on paper, it seems like the New England Patriots are a possibility. He reunites with Mike Vrabel, but we'll also see how things shake out with Vrabel because of, what else is going on with him and the Patriots at this moment. But that being said, he's a loser in the sense that he has now lost his role because of Mekhi Lemon coming in for Philadelphia, but certainly will be a winner in the long run.
That was my first reaction when I saw that pick. One was, bye, AJ, pack your bags. Two was, how does Howie Roseman keep getting away with this? How does Howie Roseman seem to just fleece the rest of the league, whether it's in trades or free agency or in the NFL draft? You're telling me that one of the biggest off-season stories in the NFL is a disgruntled wide receiver that the relationship has soured with his quarterback, the relationship has soured with the organization, and AJ Brown wants out, and you get a consensus top 3 wide receiver at 20? that perfectly fills in the hole that will be left inevitably. I believe, you believe, we all believe, when AJ Brown gets traded to the New England Patriots. A guy in Mekhi Levin that I think so perfectly fits the identity of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's tough. He's gritty. He'll block. He will just put his nose to the grindstone. Like, you have a clear problem, and you are so perfectly able to identify and fix that problem through the draft, and it falls to you at 20. I mean, I think that was an expert pick, and just I think there's a little bit of luck involved in everything, but also with the draft, sometimes the draft just has to fall your way. I think the draft fell perfectly the way of Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles. Last minute before we wrap up, some of our initial thoughts, at least on the first round of the NFL draft. A reminder, winners and losers, an initial reaction on Friday and a couple of weeks and months after the draft. We don't know. Like, we are all guessing. None of us have a crystal ball. All we can go off of is initial reaction, but time will tell 2, 3, 4 years from now. But I think what is a fair reaction right now is just our favorite moment from last night. We had so many good ones, heartfelt moments, fun moments. What was your favorite moment from the draft last night, Coley?
Mine was just that, the heartfelt, the tears. We saw it with Mekhi Lemon. Of course, he had the sunglasses on, so it was hard to see that he was crying, but he was definitely crying. And we also saw it from that guy right there, Jordan Tyson. Oh man, I mean, the emotion. You see him looking upward. He's certainly in prayer and thanking God for this moment, this opportunity. And that was something that his dad, John Tyson, actually talked about in an interview at the same time that was going on. And it was actually a comment from John Tyson in terms of basically saying, hey, this is a family that has dealt with so much. They also have another son who's an NBA draft pick already. They've had so many things to overcome, and Jordan in particular has as well. And so that was just a moment of him having this catharsis of just letting it all out, feeling like, hey, I have finally arrived. I've accomplished something that I set my mind on for so long, and it came out. I mean, the tears were real; they were evident. That was my highlight moment, and even hearing that powerful message from his father, which kind of encouraged everybody who goes through anything not to give up on themselves and to keep fighting and to keep believing in themselves. That made me feel good. So that was my moment of the night.
So many proud parents last night. I love that about the draft. It is so heartwarming seeing all of these lifelong dreams come true. So much more draft talk to get into, but also we had some action on the hardwood last night. Home teams defend home court, NBA on target or on something. Coming up next.
If somebody stops you on the street and they say, Dion, what's Joe Brady like? What do you tell them?
Just a dope, cool dude from Florida that loves ball, and he'll shoot you straight. He'll tell you what you need to, but he'll also laugh and tell a joke. And as a player, coach relationship, it's beautiful to have somebody that can turn it on and turn it off at any time.
What is going to happen inevitably in 6 months when you are tempted, when you have that itch, when the thoughts in the back of your mind say, you still got it. No one leaves on a winning streak.
That's what's going to happen.
Yes,
I know.
It's inevitable.
I've been around this sport long enough to know that that's what's going to happen. Is I would like to retire on a 4-fight win streak, then roll the dice, come back, get a loss, and then guess what happens? Then I'm going to get in this chase of wanting to get that loss back. And we see how that ends up for a lot of fighters.
What put you over the top to I want to go to Indiana?
I was really close to going to a couple other schools. However, the point that really cemented me into Indiana is Coach Signetti really focusing on development. His big selling point was, hey, I don't know, other schools are trying to sell you on if we're going to win a national championship, if we're going to win all these games. I just know one thing I can do is develop quarterbacks.
We have the fake handoff. Nate Davis rumbling, stumbling, bumbling, and then easy walking with a little bit of swaggy style in for a touchdown.
Yeah, the swaggy walk is as fast as his run. So that's what's...
Looked like maybe we were going to get a fake pick. Instead, wow, he is absolutely rolling, and now we have dueling quarterback runs all over the place.
Just like LeBron James's vintage wine collection, some things just get better with age. 34-year-old CJ McCollum puts on an encore clutch performance, and the Hawks take the series 2-1 over the New York Knicks. Coley, this was a game 3 for all of the home court advantages. Atlanta defends home court even in some kind of late game heroics. So it is now time for on target or on something. We're going to look at the week's boldest NBA takes, and we will ask ourselves, is this analysis right on target, right on the money, or is it full of you-know-whats? We'll start exactly what we're seeing right now with CJ McCollum and the Atlanta Hawks. So on target or on something, we'll start with you, Coley. CJ McCollum has been the best early story of the playoffs.
Oh, man, absolutely. That is absolutely on target. And maybe it is my Atlanta native rose-colored glasses that I'm looking through right now when I say that, and also when I see this shot like I did last night. But no, this guy has been absolutely unreal. Yes, we mentioned LeBron James and the vintage age that LeBron has been playing at. I would argue LeBron is probably the only other player right now who's having a better postseason and more unexpected postseason. But CJ, oh my gosh, this is like a career rejuvenation that's going on for him right now after having been rescued, so to speak, from Washington with that trade several months ago. He has really shown up. I mean, his assist numbers have ticked up a little bit since that trade. His defensive numbers have also been up a little bit since that trade. And then, of course, having clutch shot, big moment after big moment in this postseason so far for the Hawks, looking as if he is the true leader of this young team. I mean, it's clear that the younger teammates on this Hawks team, that they really look up to him. They defer to him in certain moments. In fact, he even noted after the game last night that it was Quinn Snyder, the head coach, who drew up a play specifically for him to take that shot with 12.5 seconds left on the game clock. I'm all for it. I mean, I am here for the CJ McCollum revival, so to speak. He hasn't won a postseason series or advanced to the next round in a postseason series since 2021. So it's been a while since he's been in a space where he could go on to a round 2. And it is really looking right now like he's got a chance to do that. But as I also warned you off camera before we came on, Caroline, as an Atlantan, we have been in moments before where our teams have looked really good in the playoffs and something has happened. So Atlantans, those of us who were born and raised in the city, we're going to wait and see if this series actually goes the way that it looks like it's going right now before you start to get too excited. But CJ has certainly tapped into something really great. So I'm on target there.
Man, 28-3 is going to haunt the dreams of every Atlanta sports fan, truly, until the end of time.
We don't want to go there. We don't need to bring that up.
I'm so sorry. I didn't even mean to bring that up. I didn't mean to put that into the atmosphere here. But I think this is 100% on something. I love this story of CJ McCollum. I mean, 55 combined points in 2 wins over the New York Knicks. And I think a sidebar to part of the reason why this is my favorite story is that everyone is trying to make CJ McCollum this like Trae Young-esque total villain at MSG or total villain for the Knicks, when CJ McCollum is the most like kind-hearted family man, mild-mannered, has never really colored outside of the lines, has never been that villain type of player. And he's at 34 years old, and at this stage in his career, all of a sudden, he's like public enemy number 1 in New York. I love just the irony of that. But what about this? We both agree that CJ McCollum has been such a fun, feel-good story, if not even the best story of the NBA postseason so far. But what about this? Our very own Kevin O'Connor called Nikola Jokic a disaster. So on target or on something, Jokic is having the worst playoff performance so far.
Man, I've got to go on target here. I mean, it is, you see Kevin O'Connor's thoughts right there. It's hard to dispute it. This has just not been the Jokic that we were expecting coming into these playoffs. The Nuggets were not supposed to get handed by the T-Wolves. They were supposed to be rolling Minnesota throughout this series. They're supposed to be up 2-1 or maybe even 3-0 at this point. And a lot of that has to do with Jokic's play, specifically in the low post. Rudy Gobert has really kind of owned him down in the paint, but then also beyond the three-point line. This has been a really rough postseason in that regard for Jokic. He's 5 of 24 from three in these playoffs so far. But also, it seems like that's been a little bit of an extension of where he was at the end of the season. He was 3 of 14, from three there in the last 5 games of the season for the Nuggets. So it feels as if something in terms of the offense, Jokic is just a little bit out of sync, a little bit out of flow with what the Nuggets are trying to do. And they've got to get back there to it if they're going to get out of this series. And a lot of that has to do with what you're seeing on the screen is Rudy Gobert has been the key. When he's been on the floor with Jokic, you see it 1 for 8, only 4 points for Jokic when Rudy Gobert is on the floor at the same time. When the T-Wolves star is off the floor, Jokic does a little bit better. The assist numbers also were down. In game 1, when the Nuggets ended up winning that one, 11 assists for Jokic, just 3 last night in game 3. So he's having a tough time figuring out the system right now, figuring out the flow of this offense, particularly because of the work that the T-Wolves are doing on him. If he can figure out what it is to kind of get around that, then maybe we will see a little bit of a better Jokic. But I'm going on target. He has been the worst superstar to this point. And I really hate it because Fitz and I were just talking a little over a week ago about how he is the most underserved and underappreciated star in the NBA. And right now he's not making us look so good. So I guess personally, I am kind of hoping that Jokic turns it around to make Fitz and I look a little bit better.
Yes, I kind of struggle with this though, because all of those numbers that you laid out and all of the points that you just made are totally fair and 1000% accurate. I mean, you look at Jokic last night, 7 of 26 from the field, 8 of 20 from the field in the game before that. When you're shooting sub 30% from the field, I don't expect how you expect to win any game in the NBA postseason. But also, despite some of the inefficient shooting, last night, Jokic was still 27, 15, and 3. In game 2, 24, 15, and 8. Like, that would be a gaudy stat line for literally anybody else in the NBA. But since we're so accustomed to Jokic being so incredibly efficient and, handing out triple doubles like they're candy, all of a sudden those kind of nights just feel lackluster for Nikola Jokic. So I struggle with saying that he's been the most disappointing superstar because he's still producing, maybe not an incredibly efficient clip, and maybe not in the form of wins, to your point, falling 2-1 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think Nuggets fans should be feeling incredibly uncomfortable, especially the way that Rudy Gobert has figured out this secret sauce of how to limit Nikola Jokic, something that nobody else in the NBA has been willing to do. But I also look at Mikal Bridges, the way that he has struggled as much as he has with the New York Knicks. I look at Brandon Ingram only putting up 7 points in game 2 against the Cleveland Cavs. Sure, Bridges and Ingram aren't the same level of superstar as Nikola Jokic, but Jokic could also use just a little bit more help around him. Last one, quickly. Taylor Jenkins is the new head coach in Milwaukee. It was announced yesterday. Of course, the former Memphis Grizzlies head coach will be going back to Milwaukee after being an assistant in the 2018-2019 season. On target or on something, hiring Taylor Jenkins is enough to convince Giannis to stay in Milwaukee.
Oh, I'm kind of both on target and on something on this one. I think it's on target simply because this is a coach who, of course, was with Giannis a few years ago. He was an assistant. Jenkins was an assistant in Milwaukee a few years ago under Mike Budenholzer, who was the head coach at that time. And this was, of course, a Bucks team that once Jenkins left, ended up going on and winning a championship. That being said, he's worked with Giannis before. He knows what it takes to work Giannis into the system. He knows what it takes to build a team around Giannis. And they probably, I would expect, have a pretty decent rapport. I mean, we don't, without me being in the building every day, I don't know that for a fact. But that being said, I would say that's on target for convincing Giannis that he can be a key contributor on this team. But I think it's also on something because there's something about this hiring that feels as if the Bucks are kind of in the middle of a total rebuild. That at least that's what the departure of Doc Rivers seemed to signal that they're ready to just strip this thing all the way down to the studs and rebuild completely anew. And if that's the case, then that's not looking good for Giannis. That's something that Giannis isn't going to want to probably stick around for. And then at the same time, this is a coach who has also done that. Taylor Jenkins did that in Memphis. He built the team from scratch, got a superstar, built around that superstar, and they went to the playoffs at a time when it seemed like that franchise wouldn't be able to do that. So that's part of the reason why I think this is on something, because this feels like this is more than just, hey, we're going to build around Giannis and all of a sudden we're going to make ourselves a contender within a year or two. This feels like a much longer term solution for Milwaukee. And the Bucks don't have a long time with Giannis and his contract situation. Of course, his contract will give him an option after this coming season. That if he does not get traded, of course, he'll be making more than $275 million a year for 4 years if he does stay with the Bucks. But I just don't know if Giannis is going to find that to be enough to stay with this team if it fully is in rebuild mode like it seems.
Yeah, I think this is on something. I like the hire, but at this point, I don't think there's anything. The Queen of England herself coming in as the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks that would make Giannis want to stay in Milwaukee. So I'll say on something there. But you know who is not on something, or maybe he is. I didn't ask, but regardless, we will welcome him in coming up next. Stephen Godfrey, our very own coworker here at Yahoo Sports, reacts to the NFL Draft coming up next.
Johnson to the end zone, caught. Guess who? C.J. Jefferson.
And in talking to the coaches this week, they said that's your playmaker. That's the guy that Jerome Johnson has the most confidence in. And there you are on 4th and goal, and you throw it right at the goal line, right at the yellow line at the wall. Terrific throw. Nice catch.
Great execution there for New Mexico. They had to have a play.
What's the appropriate reaction to Jon Scheyer and where he stands right now?
Taking a step back and taking a measured look at everything. And one of the issues that Duke has is they basically have a new team every year. A lot of the Duke players don't have that memory bank. So you have to look at that, like you have to be able to put those players in as many game situations and practice as you can.
Taylor Green's like raw arm talent is kind of insane.
Down the field, he has more accuracy than short throws. Like he struggles throwing short, and it's the most bizarre thing. So with Green, is this just what he is? Some guys just throw how they throw, no matter what you do.
I do think if you are trying to like really take the swing somewhere outside the top 100, it's a 3% chance. But I'm at least at 3 with him as opposed to like 0 with most of the other guys.
Now Sutherland to send it away. Deep man will be Arlen Bruce. Bruce angling near side, gonna play it off the wall. Tough one, but he scoops it at the 2. Bruce gets crushed.
He gets drawn right into this, and boy, that is a big collision there.
Myler gonna throw for the first time, and down he goes.
Fishers is playing with an edge. Naylor had nowhere to go with the ball. He had to eat it and take that hit.
John Ledyard, Buccaneers and NFL draft reporter, posting, not in a million years did the Bucks think that Ruben Bain was actually going to get to 15. Got maybe the best pass rusher in the class without moving a spot. So let's stick on that. And to touch on that, we'll welcome in one of the hosts of the College Football Inquirer, one of our friends, friend of the show, Stephen Godfrey, joins us here on Yahoo Sports Daily. Godfrey, always lovely to hear your voice and to see your face. Your
Good
reaction
morning.
there. Good morning. Ruben Bain,
not surprised
short
at all.
arms and all.
Yeah, short arms are not what caused the drop, by the way. Short arms can be overcome. That's a pass rush styling issue. This was problematic defensive end draft questions about character. Like, I think it was probably 2 or 3 appearances ago on the show we were talking about James Pierce and the overwhelming amount of red flags that the Falcons ignored to trade back into the first last year. I think there's a trickle-down effect to that of burning a mid-level first-round pick on someone who might not be available because of non-football issues in a season or two. I think it's that simple. Bain, in terms of a resume, checked out totally. I mean, was absolutely fine. Felt like a top 10 pick. I think that's why he landed at Tampa where he did. By the way, I'm not trying to correspond or forecast or say he's going to have an incident like a Pierce. It's just this is what scares people off this time of year.
You know, as we talk about Bain, of course, the biggest surprise of the night seemed to be the Rams reaching up, grabbing Ty Simpson there at number 13. What was your reaction to LA doing that, Stephen?
Whew. The state of college football is interesting, isn't it, y'all? Ty Simpson this high to by the way, a non-laughable NFL front office. We've talked a lot about this on College Football Inquirer, how there's kind of a paucity of good quarterback talent available this year. And I've assured everybody, one, that's not college football's problem. That's the NFL's problem. Okay, college football should worry about college football, not the NFL draft. And two, wait till 27. 27 is going to be absolutely stacked, right? But there's a sort of perennial maxim from the college football side of this sport where we watch NFL executives overreach on quarterback talent every single year. I know why. I sympathize with a lot of these franchises. Look, I've seen it as an NFL fan and kind of even lied to myself and be like, Desmond Ridder will work out. It's fine. We can just shine him up. This to me is a little confounding because obviously Los Angeles wants to create a succession plan for Matt Stafford, right? Obviously as well, Los Angeles is in a position to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. This is an NFC championship team that we're talking about, which, by the way, the only reason they drafted at 13 was because they fleeced Atlanta in a trade, right? So it's very strange to me that they drafted Simpson where they did, and then it feels so counterintuitive for a franchise that has always been so smart and so even and measured to really reach on a guy who I think had we had a more balanced quarterback class would have probably been something closer to a low-end day 2 pick. I think the absence of people like Dante Moore from Oregon and the lack of development of a Drew Aller or a Cade Klubnik just sort of forced Simpson into the conversation for people. And I'm shocked that it was LA that bid on it.
I'm shocked too, because dumb teams overdraft quarterbacks, and the Rams are a very smart team. But you watched every snap of Ty Simpson this past year at Alabama. Is Ty Simpson an NFL quarterback?
Ooh, that's a trick question. Because I would love to say, hey, no, hey, this is a terrible play. Is he the 13th best player in this draft? Is he worth a high-end first-round pick? No, he's not.
No.
He's definitely not. By the way, why couldn't LA just grab him on day 2? As you guys go down from 13, who is in line? I understand, we watched Philly embarrass Pittsburgh over a wide receiver last night. Nobody was planning to do that on Ty Simpson, okay? You could have picked him up tonight at a much cheaper cost. You paid premium for a mid prospect. Now, the reason I hesitate is that you do have to defer to the expertise of McVay and his staff. There is no more emulated and imitated NFL staff right now than Sean McVay's offensive tree, right? So if you're going to have to plug a questionable reach of a first-round pick at quarterback, you would plug it into that system in terms of NFL development. And I guess what they're saying here is that, he's going to clipboard and we're going to put him through his paces in practice for a year or two. But again, that's fine. And if you see something in Simpson we don't, that's fine too. But again, just buy him later. You could have gotten him tonight for sure without anybody jumping in front of you. And if you didn't, by the way, Caroline, that helmet behind you, in my opinion, this is, if you need a hot take today, you guys want to clip something for social, I really feel like Nussmeier was the better long-term pick.
Ooh, why is that?
And
Go
cut.
And cut. Thank you. Yeah, no, I gave us a little time there on the lag, so we could just we could have that for people to scream at me on Twitter later this afternoon. Yesterday, I don't know who posted this on social. I always love this. There are these day after the drafts mocks for the following season. And what is more asinine than that, than trying to project a draft 363 days before it happens? Nussmeier in a lot of these, and I think even PFFs, was the number 1 quarterback going. Go back in time a year and think about Nussmeier and his trajectory at LSU. We find out now that, like, if Brian Kelly owned a car and he pulled up to the dealership, it would have no oil change in 100,000 miles. All right. One tire would be completely missing. And like the gas pump would be dangling from like the exhaust. He is the world's worst owner of live human beings in terms of like the way he's his checkered history, let's say, of how he treats his players. This kid played with a cyst on his spine last year. A cyst on his spine. And if you guys can go back, I know we certainly did it on CFE. I was on this show maybe a week or two before he got fired saying, hey, there's something wrong with his mechanics, right? Opposing coaches are noticing that he's having issues essentially with like trunk rotation, right? Just the actual motion that the obliques create. And that's why he's not getting the spin. That's why he's not getting the trajectory. He's making the right decisions. He's seeing the field. He was, I would say, semi-well protected. It wasn't a perfect O-line, but there was something wrong with him fundamentally, which created this drop. And now we find out, yeah, he had a cyst on his spine. It just blows my mind that this was a decision that was made either by Nussmeier and his camp and LSU and the coaching staff or some combination thereof, because his draft stock has plummeted. And I still think this guy, when healthy, is at least a second contract quarterback in the NFL. So this is, to go back to Simpson for a second, I'm sitting here thinking, aren't the Rams kind of always the savviest or among the savviest in the room, right? We give them that level of credit. Why not sit back? Because you're in a clipboard situation. Stafford's not leaving, right? We know we have Stafford for at least one more year. Why not sit back, take a defender, take a receiver with your 13th, and then grab somebody like Nussmeier, provided he's totally healthy, which I mean, everything that he has suffered from so far, I think he's recoverable. He can still have a professional career. This is where, like, I think about Nussmeier when I see the Simpson pick, is kind of what I'm getting at.
I mean, both have question marks, but you wouldn't have had to draft one with the 13th overall pick. I didn't think you needed to draft either with the 13th overall pick.
No.
But
yes,
Godfrey, I feel like we do this every year, and conference wars have, I think, heated up more and more in the NIL era more than ever before. What we have the grand total after round one: 10 Big Ten players, 7 SEC players, only one more than the ACC. We do this all the time. This many Big Ten players, this many SEC players drafted in the first round. Why am I supposed to care about that?
You're not, but college football media has to have a job 365 days a year. So sometimes we drag some stuff out in public. I mean, what can we discern, if anything, that you had Arizona State showing up in the first round? I don't know. That they had a good football player that fits at the next level, right? They had 2 picks last night. What does it say that you're getting defensive Russian talent, from a place like Central Florida over a more traditional power? I don't know. Probably nothing. It means that Central Florida recruited well. Although he did go to the Cowboys, so who knows? I mean, you never know. It doesn't actually mean anything, but it is something for us in terms of the people who go and listen to coaches and college GMs and athletic directors talk about, we want to be a talent development program. We want to be a premier program. Most of what they're trying to say is we are an NFL factory. They're not allowed to say that because it's about education. Remember, we're all here, student athlete and all that. If you lose that moniker of that total amount of NFL player talent developed, which the SEC is on the cusp of losing for the first time, I think since 2004, my College Football Inquirer co-host Andy Staples has been tracking this by the number of players. I can bet you it'll be a T-shirt, and I guarantee you, when Tony Petitti gets up at Big Ten Media Days in Chicago in late July, it will be among the first things that he mentions.
Yeah, it seems like that's always something that those commissioners want to harp on, because I don't know, they feel like this is what proves that their conference is legitimate more than somebody else, forgetting the championships, forgetting what happens with the CFP appearances.
Yes.
I don't know.
It's what it is. It's another marketing element for them. It's basically so that they can say, hey, if you're a casual football fan, tune in Saturday night on Fox instead of Saturday night on ESPN for the SEC, because you're going to see more guys playing in the league one day. So this is why it does sort of matter from a marketing standpoint. from a fan standpoint, you don't have to buy into this unless you just want to argue with somebody from a different region of the country, which is what most Americans do. So,
yeah. Switching gears for one final question. We were talking Hawks in the last segment, and I found out that, Steven, you're also from Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta. With two Atlanta natives on this show, we got to talk about the Hawks.
Is it in the frame, Caroline?
And
there we go. Yeah.
There we are. I see the great votes right there.
Yeah. I was at 28-3. I heard that, by the way. Caroline, I heard that, by the way. I'm sorry to interrupt.
It wasn't me that blew the lead.
What are we doing?
Don't
you want to talk about the time LSU couldn't cross the 50? You want to talk about the time LSU couldn't cross the 50 in the Superdome in the national championship game? I thought we were being nice to each other. How many times do I come on the show?
I have so many calluses on my fan brain that you literally cannot hurt me. My quarterback played with a cyst on his spine this past season.
28-3 still.
Okay, so anyways, 100% of the Hawks' success is because of Magic City Night. You can't convince me otherwise. All right? No, that's not true. I'm extremely excited. Here, I'll ask a question as the guest. All right, I'll ask, and we'll do it from one Atlantan to another. Can you, in your lifetime, remember a moment in which the Hawks felt like the whole world was in front of them? Right, because you enter this season, it's Trae Young, it's Porzingis, it's another year of feeling like we're in play-in hell. Right, you don't really feel like Young is ever going to coalesce around what Snyder's doing. The defensive issues persist, and it just feels like same old Hawks. You have, thank you, New Orleans, by the way, for one of the most astronomically stupid trades in professional sports history. So we're like a couple weeks, I believe, from the draft lottery. This feels like the most promising this franchise, the near future of this franchise is the most promising it's ever been as a fan. And that's what's so exciting to me. I don't even, look, I'm going to say something I shouldn't. This series, to me, feels like house money. The fact that we weren't in the play-in, the fact that we nudged our way into the 6th seed with what was thought to be not a decimated roster, but definitely a rebuilding roster right after the trade deadline, that they're doing this now is so encouraging for this young core, regardless of what we're about to add. So I am beyond excited, even if we lose the series.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think
you too.
I feel like it reminds me a little bit of that Trae Young year when he was in the Garden in 21 and, showed up and showed out against the Knicks fans there. But the difference is there still was this tension of what can this team be beyond this? And you're right. This feels like a moment of, hey, we're actually building towards something good here. So I'm with you right there.
Yeah, it also feels like we're ahead of schedule. If we're doing this to a 3 seed now, imagine if the draft works the right way that we think. And they have cap space too. How is this the best run franchise in Atlanta right now? It's mind-boggling.
You two and the entire city of Atlanta, you deserve this. And also, I'm not rooting for anyone's downfall, but I do kind of enjoy the Knick fan meltdown on social media. It is kind of fun to watch sometimes. No shade to the New York Knicks fan base. Godfrey, we appreciate you can listen to him on the College Football Inquirer podcast. Thank you, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Godfrey mentioned it. That man could have been the second best quarterback in this draft. So let's place him and the rest of the quarterbacks remaining in the NFL draft coming up next.
Caleb Gordon, a very interesting situation. He's got a quarterback competition between Austin Mack, who's a guy he brought from Washington, who's been on Alabama's roster for 2 years, and Keelan Russell. Very interesting spring game, as it looked like Russell was further along than Austin Mack.
Do you go get the message board analysis? That's my favorite, where it's like, on that completion, I'm going to tell you what, the spiral looked a little bit tighter. The scrutiny applied to these like skeleton drills. God bless April.
We're going to give you a name. You tell us whether it's a real college athlete or if our producers just made it up out of thin air. Okay, so collegian or concoction. The first one we'll give you is Fat Brooks. Now, for clarity, fat is P-H-A-T.
That is a concoction.
That's a collegian. He's a guard for Central Michigan.
Fat Brooks.
Fat Brooks, yes.
Cook sends it away. Josiah King takes it deep in his own end zone. King across the 10. King across midfield, beats Cook, and King gonna dance into the end zone. Touchdown.
Playing Russian roulette there. I mean, how many times are you going to just kick right to him? Look at that. Who wants to run in front of that? That's 5'11", 220 pounds, and all thighs. I mean, no one's going to try to go low on him.
I mean, in some of these clips, your ability to fight over screens. Is this something that you had to learn over time, or is this something that you've always had?
I think that I naturally always was able to switch. I think that I've always naturally been quick on my feet. I just think more so like maybe like low tendencies or more so like low details, which I'm still working on. But I think that like, you know, those little things that like makes the difference between a good defender and a great defender.
QB or not QB? Now that is the question. Let's look at some of the teams picking tonight in rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL draft and see if we can match them with some of these remaining quarterbacks still on the board. So QB or not QB? We will start with the man that Stephen Godfrey just said may have very well been the second best quarterback in this year's draft over Ty Simpson, who went number 13 overall to the Rams, and that is former LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. So, Coley, where does Nussmeier make sense in your opinion?
Where he makes sense is the next team that is due to get a quarterback, and that is the Arizona Cardinals. They've actually got the second pick in round 2 tonight. The Cardinals do have a real need for quarterback, and the fact that, as our friend Steven just said, he is the best quarterback remaining on the board, or appears to be the best quarterback remaining on the board. Let's send him to Arizona. Let's see what they can do there. Granted, he is going to be going into a situation a lot like Ty Simpson, where he is not going to be depended upon as the day one starter, but he is a quarterback who could, take over at some point during this season, depending on how it goes. And, he is also a quarterback who, as you mentioned, kind of maybe got a raw deal there at LSU in terms of how he was treated, how he was rushed back onto the field, dealing with injury at times. Maybe this becomes a totally different situation, a brand new clearing of the slate, so to speak, with a completely new regime in Arizona. So we'll see. I just think that this is probably the best fit for him, and the fact that this is the next team up that is most likely going to take a quarterback, it would make sense that he goes here. I would say if Ty Simpson was on the board at this point, this could be a place that Ty Simpson maybe could go. But certainly this seems to be the spot for Garrett Nussmeier.
Coley, I never hide my sports fandom. You can see it over my right shoulder. Thank you very much. Garrett Nussmeier played at my alma mater and my favorite team in the whole entire world. I want good things for Garrett Nussmeier because there's been a pretty good track record recently with LSU quarterbacks in the National Football League and Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels. So I don't want to see my quarterback go to Arizona, because that just kind of feels where quarterbacks go to die. Because Arizona has had no success really in recent history. And look, things could change. You have Marvin Harrison Jr., who I feel like has still yet to be unlocked in the National Football League. They draft Jeremiah Love with a number 3 overall pick. I love Jeremiah Love, and I think a do-it-all running back is the perfect thing for a young quarterback. And look, Mike LaFleur might be the missing piece in Arizona. There's also a very good track record of former Rams offensive coordinators and their next step as head coaches. So maybe there is a new era in Arizona and things could change. My perception of Arizona could change. But I'm not going to put my eggs into the hope basket. So I'm going to say the best fit is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Another quarterback needy team. Who knows what Aaron Rodgers is going to do? And even if he does come back, I don't think any of us believe that Aaron Rodgers is in it for the long haul. He has probably 1, maybe 2 years left in the National Football League. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be looking for their quarterback of the future. And, in Mike McCarthy's heavy RPO, relying a lot on the run system, I think Garrett Nussmeier fits that system so incredibly well. And I also just want my former quarterback to go to a competent, well-run organization with a very strong history of winning and with a rabid and passionate fan base. So I'm going to say Garrett Nussmeier in Pittsburgh is the best fit for me. What about this guy? There were some smokescreens, some rumors coming out about him yesterday and late Wednesday night that Carson Beck could be a first-round pick. I wasn't buying it, but I love rumor season this time of year in the NFL draft. But he is still on the board. So, Coley, where does he make sense to you?
Yeah, I wasn't buying that intrigue as well. But the Jets, this feels like a space for him. Of course, the Jets are still needing another backup quarterback. Geno Smith is slated to be their starter right now. One of the things that I really like about Beck, and this was also something that I know that he's been criticized over, is a little bit of his attitude. You know, he's got a little bit of what we like to say. He's got that dog in him, and I don't just mean the Georgia Bulldog that he had in him when he played there in Athens, but he does have a little bit of a true win streak within. You know, he had had a great level of success at Georgia. Obviously, took a Miami team last year all the way to the national championship game when. Going into the season, I don't think you would say that Miami really had a chance to win the national championship. A lot of that is because of the quarterback. Say what you will about some of his inconsistencies at times, but the fact of the matter is the people in New York need someone with winning in their DNA. Aaron Glenn needs a quarterback with winning in his DNA. I think all the rest of this stuff, all the the mechanic issues, the inconsistencies in terms of throwing, maybe his inconsistencies on third downs at times throwing, all of that is fixable. You know, those are the kinds of things that with the right amount of coaching and tutelage, those can get corrected. But when it comes to finding a way to get the job done in the most clutch of moments, which is what Carson Beck did for the most part throughout his career, I think that that's a good thing for the Jets. So to me, New York makes sense for him right here.
I agree. I think the Jets feel like a good landing spot, but also with all of that being said, I don't know how high Carson Beck's ceiling is as an NFL quarterback because he's a guy who's had a lot of experience in college, who has started a lot of games and has quality postseason and big time game experience. So you would think that Carson Beck is pretty close to, I'm not going to say finished product because you don't go into the NFL as a finished product, but I think you're seeing as close to the Carson Beck ceiling as possible. And I just look at what Mario Cristobal asked of him in some of Miami's biggest games this past season. I mean, he threw 20 times against Texas A&M in the college football playoff, less than 30 times against Ohio State. Miami really leaned on the run and their defense, mostly because Carson Beck has a turnover problem. So while I do think he might be a good fit into this Jets scheme, and while I do think he might benefit from sitting behind Geno Smith for at least a year, I do wonder if the Jets are looking for the savior of their organization. I don't know if Carson Beck necessarily fits that bill. I don't think Carson Beck, at least I don't right now today, view Carson Beck as the savior of anyone's organization. But he's not the only quarterback on the board. Drew Aller is also on the board, former quarterback out of Penn State. Where do you see him landing?
To be clear, I will say I don't know if any of these quarterbacks right now look like the quarterback of the future to me. I think we'll see a little bit more of that next year, and that is probably as part of the problem with this particular draft board. When it comes to Drew Aller, though, I'm going with the team that you just picked on the previous quarterback on Nussmeier. I'm going with the Steelers. And maybe some of that is just the whole Pittsburgh connection, of course, him having gone to Penn State, as you see right there. So the good people of Western Pennsylvania are going to be very familiar with his game. I know that they're not a fan of how things went for the Nittany Lions the last couple of years, but still, they will be familiar with who he is. And I mean, he is certainly a quarterback who also would have a situation where maybe he is learning for a little while, whether it's learning a little bit from Will Howard, who, of course, is a very young quarterback himself, or learning from Aaron Rodgers, if Aaron Rodgers is indeed going to be coming back. I think that's the number one thing that the Steelers have to answer for themselves, regardless of who they end up drafting, but particularly if they draft a quarterback like Aller, is what are we doing about this Aaron Rodgers situation? But that being said, this is a guy who certainly could become a solid backup here in 2026, and then maybe we'll see beyond from there. But again, to the point that I just made at the start, I don't really see any of these quarterbacks in this second round, third round, and below range as being the quarterback of the future. But I also am looking very forward to at least one of them in future years, making us eat our words when we say that.
100%. And especially considering that a lot of these quarterback needy franchises, whether it be the Jets or the Cardinals, don't necessarily have the best track record of landing and hitting on those quarterbacks or putting the best ecosystem around their young quarterbacks. But the reason why we're having this conversation is because one of the biggest stories of last night's draft was Ty Simpson going number 13 overall to the Los Angeles Rams, even when there were questions about if Ty Simpson was a night one talent at all. And one thing that has really kind of sparked a lot of that conversation is Sean McVay's reaction in the post-draft press conference. Coley, I believe in what we do, we're kind of professional body language readers. But I do want to look and see kind of what Sean McVay looked like in his post-draft press conference. He was short in his answers, didn't really sound or look overly enthused with the Ty Simpson pick. Are we looking too much into that? Or what was your reaction to Sean McVay's press conference?
I think we're looking at it the right way, that somewhere there was a disconnect between him and GM Les Snead. It seems as if just looking at McVay's body language there, and we've seen other angles of similar photographs of this press conference, it did not seem as if he was very enthusiastic about being there. You would infer that he wanted some type of playmaker to pair with his current roster, to have Matt Stafford, have a receiver that he could throw to, like a Mekhi Lemon, who, of course, there has the Southern California ties, being the USC star. People who were in the room saying that there were not a whole lot of smiles in that room, saying that they didn't like the body language. I didn't like it either. I will say this, though. The Rams also aren't really in the position of knowing how to react to a first-round pick, because this is only their second first-round pick since 2017. And that's only because, they typically trade out of the first round. They've been in a position that they can trade out of the first round and let someone else have those picks. Or, of course, the Matthew Stafford deal, when they got Stafford, they ended up losing their first-round picks to Detroit for that. So yeah, maybe they're just in a position. They're just not used to celebrating. I don't know.
Man, it very well could be, and that is a crazy stat, but Sean McVay looked to me like a guy that was sitting there thinking, I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this, and this was not my decision. I think reading into body language is a thing that we can do and we should do here on this show, and fans can do as well. But that was not the only action, the only news that we got last night. AJ Dybantsa, friend of the program, has declared for the NBA draft. So another friend of the program, Dan Wolken, joins us coming up next to break it all down.
If somebody stops you on the street and they say, Dion, what's Joe Brady like? What do you tell them?
Just a dope, cool dude from Florida that loves ball, and he'll shoot you straight. He'll tell you what you need to, but he'll also laugh and tell a joke. And as a player, coach relationship, it's beautiful to have somebody that can turn it on and turn it off at any time.
What is going to happen inevitably in 6 months when you are tempted, when you have that itch, when the thoughts in the back of your mind say, you still got it. No one leaves on a winning streak.
That's what's going to happen.
Yes,
I know.
It's inevitable.
I've been around this sport long enough to know that that's what's going to happen. Is I would like to retire on a 4-fight win streak, then roll the dice, come back, get a loss, and then guess what happens? Then I'm going to get in this chase of wanting to get that loss back. And we see how that ends up for a lot of fighters.
What put you over the top to I want to go to Indiana?
I was really close to going to a couple other schools. However, the point that really cemented me into Indiana is Coach Ignetti really focusing on development. His big selling point was, hey, I don't know, other schools are trying to sell you on if we're going to win a national championship, if we're going to win all these games. I just know one thing I can do is develop quarterbacks.
We have the fake handoff. Nate Davis rumbling, stumbling, bumbling, and then easy walking with a little bit of swaggy style in for a touchdown.
Yeah, the swaggy walk is as fast as his run. So that's what's...
Looked like maybe we were going to get a fake pick. Instead, wow, he is absolutely rolling, and now we have dueling quarterback runs all over the place.
Breaking news! Potential number 1 overall pick AJ Dybantsa has declared for the 2026 NBA draft. Dybantsa averaged 25.5 points, 6.8 rebounds, and 3.7 assists, in 1 year at BYU. And for more on that decision, we're joined by our good friend Dan Wolken, senior writer for Yahoo Sports. Dan, appreciate you for being here. So I know you've got a busy week ahead of you, but I do want to start with this. What do you make of AJ Dybantsa declaring for the NBA draft, finally making that decision? And do you think he could be a lock to be the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, suspenseful, right, on that one. We weren't sure which way that was going to go. Just kidding.
Yeah.
No, look, I don't know that he's a lock to go number 1. I think it's going to depend a lot on how the lottery plays out. And I do think this is the kind of draft, as good as Dybantsa is, there maybe are some teams that might have some individual preferences. And I don't know, Boozer could be in the mix for that as well, depending on how someone evaluates these guys. But yeah, Dybantsa, the way he played, I thought at BYU, especially in the second half of that season when they really, really needed him to carry a lot of scoring load. And he was able to continue to get buckets. And I think that his ability to score one-on-one, create his own shot from that wing position, it's kind of what everybody in the league needs more of. So I think it's highly likely he'll be the number 1 pick.
Speaking of number 1 picks, Cooper Flagg, of course, was that this past year. So who was a more can't-miss prospect? Was it Flagg a year ago or Dybantsa this year?
It's a really good question, and I think I would probably go with Flagg as just a little bit ahead of him as a prospect, because I think when you look at his development curve and the way he was able to sort of fit into the NBA this year as kind of a do-it-all guy, he's already proven that he belongs physically at that level, can do it on the defensive end. He's obviously not a guy who's going to shoot the ball well yet at this point in his career. He's still got a ways to go to develop, I think, that skill set. But there's no question that for me, Cooper Flagg is a two-way player. He's projecting out 3 years down the road to be one of those guys who just impacts all over the floor every minute of the game.
Okay, Dan, I am going to appoint you the official king of the NBA draft lottery. Congratulations. You have supreme power over the draft lottery, so you get to pick which team has the number 1 overall pick. So if you could do that, which team would you give the number 1 overall pick and the opportunity to draft AJ Dybantsa? Which team in the draft lottery could use and utilize and unlock AJ Dybantsa the most?
Well, I am coming to you from Atlanta, and I think the answer is the Hawks, because the Hawks obviously own that Pelicans pick, but they also own the pick from Milwaukee if that's better than the New Orleans pick. So they get a couple shots at this lottery thing. And, who knows? The way the odds are now, anybody could win. But I think if Atlanta was able to get Dybantsa, I mean, they're already a very good team. We've seen in the playoffs and what they've done against the Knicks. But they do need more scoring. And they need a guy like Dybantsa who can slide in, to that 3 position. I think he could play alongside Jalen Johnson just fine. And honestly, like if the Hawks were to land him, I think he's a kind of guy who instantly makes them a real contender to win the East, maybe as soon as next year.
Oh, man, I'm loving this. This is like a full Atlanta show. It was so unexpected. I'm from there. Dan's coming to us live from there. Steven talking Hawks as well. This has been great. But we got to talk about another sport now, and that's the Kentucky Derby, because that's where you're about to head in just a few short hours, actually, ahead of next Saturday's 152nd running of the Kentucky Derby. And Dan, I want to ask you, what is the number 1 storyline that we need to be on the lookout for, or a few storylines we need to be on the lookout for from Louisville?
I think the big topic this week leading up to the Derby is going to be the Triple Crown itself. For a very long time, there's been a controversy within the sport about the spacing of the Triple Crown. You get 2 weeks after the Kentucky Derby for the Preakness, and then 3 weeks after that for the Belmont. But what's happened is over the course of time, for a lot of reasons that probably we don't have time to get into here, trainers in the modern era prefer the races spaced out longer. just the frailties of the modern thoroughbred. They just don't bounce back as quickly as they used to. And nobody really would ever run a horse back 2 weeks after a race like the Kentucky Derby, if not for the Triple Crown. But as we saw last year, Sovereignty won the Derby, did not race in the Preakness, won the Belmont. So this is a real problem for horse racing. And now there is finally some chatter that there could be real momentum to move the Preakness, space it out a little bit further. Churchill Downs, which obviously owns the Kentucky Derby, just bought the intellectual property rights to the Preakness, and there's all this turmoil going on in Maryland with Pimlico and what's going to happen to the Preakness. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to stay in Baltimore. But I think Churchill is going to be able to sort of get this over the finish line where they space the races out a little bit more. And honestly, that's going to be the topic that dominates the conversation on the backstretch.
So, Dan, I will admit and acknowledge I don't live very much in this space of horse racing. I love the Churchill Downs and I love the Kentucky Derby. I love a good hat, but I don't really know anything about any of the contenders. So what are some names that I should know, we all should know, to keep an eye on as we head into the Kentucky Derby next week?
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a Derby with a huge favorite that sort of everybody gets on board with. I think there's a tier, though, and Renegade, I think, is probably going to be the favorite ultimately on race day. It was very impressive winning the Arkansas Derby. And then you've got a horse by the name of Further Ado, who dominated the Bluegrass Stakes in Kentucky. People really on the numbers, which is a huge part of horse racing now, is analyzing the numbers. He was sort of off the charts that day, and the question is, can he carry that from Keeneland to Churchill Downs? And then the Florida Derby was really a key race, and I think there's 3 horses who all kind of finished bunched up there. Commandment got up for the win there. The Puma and Chief Wallaby, who was trained by Bill Mott, who has won the Derby twice, including last year with Sovereignty. And he has been very forthright that he thinks this is a really good horse that he thinks has a chance to win. And when Bill Mott talks like that, I listen. I think everybody should listen. So those are the 5 that I think going into the week are going to get the most conversation.
You know, Dan, in the last several years, we've seen a real emergence of Japanese-bred horses at the Derby. In fact, just 2 years ago, one finished 5th. We haven't seen one go number 1 overall and actually win at Churchill Downs, but it just does seem like it's probably just a matter of time. Who are the horses, Japanese-bred horses specifically, that look like they've got a shot? I saw Dan and Bourbon was one of them that was listed on our odds there. Tell us a little bit more about what they might be able to do this year.
Yeah, so there's 2 Japanese horses in the field. Dan and Bourbon is one, and he's got a good American sire, Maxfield, who is a pretty young sire whose horses have been extremely fast early in his career at stud. And so he's got, I think, the breeding to compete in this race. And then there's a horse named Wonder Dean who comes from Japan, raced in the Middle East to do his prep races. Look, the hard part for any Japanese horse or a horse coming from the Middle East is the trip. It's a long trip. How do they get adjusted? There's a whole quarantine process. We've seen different things over the years. These horses come over and their training methods over there are different. So you see some unusual things on the backside with these horses. There's no question someone like Dan and Bourbon, from all accounts, is talented enough to compete and possibly win this race. But you just don't know sort of the level of competition they've been facing in Japan. It's a very difficult thing to predict. But yes, it is going to happen at some point because the breeding and training program in Japan has really, really improved. They've imported a lot of American bloodlines and really enhanced the breed over there. And they produce fast horses. So if it happens this year, I don't think anybody would be super shocked.
I want to pull up some of the Kentucky Derby odds again really quickly. First of all, I don't know how you bet against a horse named the Puma. I might put my money on that one. But in your opinion, Dan, what is the best way to bet on the Kentucky Derby?
So the Derby's always a really fun race to bet. It's probably for a lot of people the one time a year they even think about betting on a horse race. But the bets can get really complicated. And certainly if you were to win a trifecta or a superfecta, something like that, you're talking, 5-figure payouts, maybe 6-figure if you get really lucky. So those are really tempting bets for a lot of people, and they're fun to do. But I really focus typically on a strategy of finding the one horse that you really like, and then I will make a win bet on that horse, and then I'll bet a bunch of exactas. So, for instance, if you like the Puma, and there's a lot of reasons to like the Puma's got a real shot to win this race, I would bet to win, and then I would bet exactas with the Puma on top of everybody in the field, and then the Puma to finish second with everybody in the field to finish first. That's how I would bet the race. But, look, everybody's got their own thing. And if you've got a good bankroll, take some swings. It's fun. And in a 20-horse field, if you get a long shot that comes in and hits the board, fourth place, third place, the payouts can really be juiced up.
Yeah, I remember 2022, I was covering the Derby, happened to come back to my hotel. A woman put $50 down, she said, on Rich Strike to win. She got a 5-figure payout off of that. Rich Strike was not even on the board the day before coming in because of a late scratch, ended up winning the Derby. So good for that lady. I wish that I was her. Speaking of that, I've been there that one time. That's the only time I've been at the Derby. But there's a lot of people here who have not. Dan, tell the folks why the Derby is such a unique event to be a part of.
I think it's probably the greatest sensory experience in all of sports. The sights, the sounds, the smells. Obviously, you're watching horses run, the colors of the silks. It's all just a lot to take in. And obviously, it gets bigger every year. 150,000 people are kind of jammed in between the grandstand and the infield. It's a huge party. People are dressed crazy. You dress like that maybe one time a year. All the women wearing the big hats. So it's kind of just an overload experience, and it's an all-day thing. You show up in the morning. The Derby, typically 7 o'clock, something like that. So it's long, it's tiring. Sometimes it's sweaty, though not this year. It's supposed to be in the 60s on Derby Day, so that'll be kind of interesting. But it's just kind of one of those things. Like if you have the opportunity to do it, you should see it once, and then I would say, as crazy of a day as it is, you're probably not going to want to come back and spend all that money and go through all that again. But to see it one time, just the whole spectacle of it. I mean, it's the Indy 500, the Daytona 500, the Super Bowl. I mean, it's kind of elements of all of those big sporting events jammed into one day.
I mean, the pomp and the circumstance, all of it. It's one of the great American events and sporting events. And Dan, I hope you have the best time. Enjoy it. Safe travels, and make sure to keep it locked on Yahoo Sports to see all of Dan's boots on the ground coverage at the Kentucky Derby. Appreciate you, Dan. We'll talk soon.
And try to win some money.
And try to win some money. Absolutely to that. Appreciate you, Dan. All right, coming up next, got some beef going on in New York, perhaps. Major League Baseball, fair or foul, coming up next.
Johnson to the end zone, caught. Guess who? CJ Jefferson.
And in talking to the coaches this week, I mean, they said that's your playmaker. That's the guy that Jerome Johnson has the most confidence in. And there you are on 4th and goal, and you throw it right at the goal line, right at the yellow line at the wall. Terrific throw. Nice catch.
Great execution there for New Mexico. They had to have a play.
What's the appropriate reaction to John Shire and where he stands right now?
Taking a step back and taking a measured look at everything. And one of the issues that Duke has is they basically have a new team every year. A lot of the Duke players don't have that memory bank. So you have to look at that, like you have to be able to put those players in as many game situations and practice as you can.
Taylon Green's like raw arm talent is kind of insane.
Down the field, he has more accuracy than short throws. Like he struggles throwing short, and it's the most bizarre thing. So with Green, is this just what he is? Some guys just throw how they throw, no matter what you do.
I do think if you are trying to like really take the swing somewhere outside the top 100, it's a 3% chance. But I'm at least at 3 with him as opposed to like 0 with most of the other guys.
Now Sutherland to send it away. Deep man will be Arlen Bruce. Bruce angling near side, going to play it off the wall. Tough one, but he scoops it at the 2. Bruce gets crushed.
He gets drawn right into this, and boy, that is a big collision there.
Myler going to throw for the first time, and down he goes.
Fishers is playing with an edge. Naylor had nowhere to go with the ball. He had to eat it and take that hit.
You've been talking to guys throughout and trying to, gauge where they're at and try to lift them as we go along here.
No, not at all. I mean, they've been on the road most of the time, so I haven't talked to them.
There you go. That was Mets superstar Juan Soto, who just came back from the injured list on Wednesday to snap the Mets' losing streak, but apparently he was not communicating with and not talking with his teammates while they were on the road, which I think rightfully so. Coley raised a lot of eyebrows across Major League Baseball and across social media. So with that, we're going to play a little bit of a game of fair or foul here. So if you're in agreement, it's fair. But if you think you're taking crazy pills, then it is foul. So let's start with the Mets here, because I think a lot of people are taking some crazy pills in Mets town. But we've heard some rumors of some beef, maybe not the best relationship between Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. So fair or foul to say that the tensions in the Mets clubhouse are leading to losing baseball on the field?
Ooh, I think I've got to go foul here. And the main reason is because the fact that we're getting this inkling that something may be going on within the Mets clubhouse, that's foul. That's getting out. Should not be taking place. And that's on the players themselves, is on the staff, is on everybody around the team from preventing that from becoming a storyline. But also, this is New York and this is the Mets, and it's kind of unsurprising to see drama, so to speak, following them. Look, we've heard these conversations about Soto in the past as a teammate. We've heard conversations about Lindor possibly as a teammate in the past in other places that they've been. So maybe it's not so surprising that these rumors are percolating. But, this isn't the only thing that's going on with the Mets. This isn't the reason why the Mets just went on a 12-game losing streak. It's not because there's tension potentially in the clubhouse. It's because, they just aren't consistent and contributing at the plate. They aren't pitching very well. They're making a few decisions, on the fringes that aren't also working out to their favor. Now, this all has to be said with this caveat, and that is, even though they did just lose those 12 straight games, they have just won 2 in a row. They won last night. They won the night before. And even last night, there was some issue late in the game. The Mets end up charging all the way back. The Twins charged back on them. The Mets took an early lead. The Twins charged all the way back. And then the Mets ended up taking the lead in the bottom of the 8th. And it was at that time when the bridge reliever, so to speak, was supposed to come out of the game, stay out, because the Mets end up having a lead going into the 9th. He starts going back onto the field as closer Devin Williams was coming in. The Mets manager, Carlos Mendoza, called it later a mistranslation, quote, mistranslation between him and his relief pitcher. Either way, the Mets have a number of issues that they've got to fix. This is just not being run like a franchise that is going on a 12-game winning streak anytime soon. But again, they just won 2 in a row, so they might end up doing that. I think that it's got to be called foul on this one, just because the beef shouldn't be there if there is beef within the clubhouse. And if there is beef, it has to be handled between closed doors. I will also add that a couple of other outlets talked to players after Soto spoke 2 days ago, and they tried to see if there was potentially a rift. And basically, guys said when it came to Soto's comments on not talking to them, they're like, hey, look, we are on the road. We're all the way on the West Coast. They're in Chicago. We're just not around him. He's back here in New York. There's no need for him to talk to us. It's early in the season. We don't need to have the psychiatrist angle from one of our teammates right now. He'll check in when he needs to check in. So they're saying at least the right things behind closed doors, or they're saying the right things publicly that way. I just hope that behind closed doors that they're handling it just the same.
And that's the right thing to say. I still think that's weird. I still think that's very strange that you're not having any sort of contact or communication with your teammates, especially when you're a leader on the team, and especially when things have been as brutal in New York as they have been. I'm with you, though. I'm going to go foul here because I think it's everything. Because if there is beef in the clubhouse, and by all reporting that we have heard, or all rumors that we have heard, is that there is a little bit of tension between those two. I think that's one thing of a lot of things. When you lose 12 games in a row, I think everyone is to blame. I think the blame pie is a bunch of slices of a bunch of different things. You can't hold on to leads. You melt down late in games. You can't bring enough offensive firepower to hold on to leads. And frustration in the clubhouse, I think, does bleed into the field, and vice versa. When you're not winning games, that builds tension within the clubhouse. One of my favorite old adages, from sports in general, is that culture is easy when you're winning and it's tested when you're losing. So if you don't have a strong culture, losing only makes it worse. So I think it's a little bit of everything that's going on in New York. But let's go from the Mets to Mets fans' favorite team, the Philadelphia Phillies. Kidding. Just kidding there. The Phillies are giving the Mets a run for their money on their losing streak. They have now lost 9 games in a row, and maybe the Phillies losing streak isn't getting as much publicity as the one that we just saw with the Mets. So fair or foul, the Phillies might actually be worse than the New York Mets.
Oh, that's technically fair. Yeah, I mean, in fact, as we're doing this live stream right now, the Phillies are 9.5 games back at first place in the NL East, and the Mets are 9. So they're a half game behind the Mets, and they're in last place. So yeah, Philadelphia is certainly the worst team in the NL East as we talk right now. That being said, it is the perception that is the issue. That's what we're discussing right here, and the perception is that the Mets are worse off. And again, a lot of that goes to the simple fact that they're playing in New York. The papers are all over. I was on the Yankees beat for a few years, a couple of years ago, so I understand what it is like to have to cover the teams in this city that I live in. I live in New York. I understand what that magnitude is. The players who play here, whether they're playing on the Jets, Giants, Yankees, Mets, Rangers, Islanders, Knicks, Nets, whatever the case is, they understand that as well. And so that's a lot of it, is the magnifying glass is just so big here in New York that the Mets are probably feeling that. Their fans are feeling that. The pressure, they're probably feeling that a lot more than Philadelphia is, at least from the outside looking in. And that being said, though, yeah, the Phillies are going on this long losing streak, their longest since 2018. They haven't lost 10 straight. Wow, they haven't lost 10 straight since an 11-game losing streak in 99. I mean, this has actually been a franchise that has had a lot of success, within the last 3 decades or so. So that is a really kind of a surprising stat to see. It's surprising to see that they're in this moment right now. But yeah, I feel like the perception is that the Mets are worse off, when in reality, it is the Phillies right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. The perception's not great, especially coming off of the heels of the way that the Mets ended their season last year. They were so up and down. They were so hot and cold. They spent so much money on their roster this past season, and you miss the postseason, and then you come out of the gates like this. The perception is not great in New York, but it's surely the baseball is not great in Philadelphia either. But last one here. Fair or foul, Mason Miller as one of the best storylines here in Major League Baseball. He's recorded 34 outs while giving up just 2 hits and 2 walks along the way, with 27 strikeouts, 0 runs allowed, a 0.00 ERA for the closer. Mason Miller, with plus 900 odds to win the Cy Young, is a legitimate Cy Young candidate.
I'm going to go fair just for the sake of argument here, because I think that maybe we probably on different odds right here. But I say fair because we saw Eric Gagne do this in 2003, a closer at the time who ends up winning the Cy Young. And that was a year where you had Mark Pryor had a great year. Mark Pryor was 18-6 for the Cubs. Cubs go on to the NLCS. That was actually the same year as the Bartman Ball. So we know what happened to Chicago, not going to the World Series, but a great year for the Cubs nonetheless. Mark Pryor doesn't win the Cy Young. Russ Ortiz for my hometown Braves had 21 wins that year, had a 2.3 something ERA, still doesn't win the Cy Young. But it seemed like Eric Gagne was so dominant, night in, night out, consistent, night in, night out, that he was the storyline for so much of the year. And I think that if Miller has that same type of production, which he has had so far this year, and I have a feeling that he's going to be consistent for the rest of the season, I think that he should be in that conversation, especially also if the Padres are in the postseason hunt by the end of the year, because clearly it's as if you have 8 innings to beat the Padres before he comes in the ninth. And as long as they've got a lead, most likely your team's not going to win that night, at least the way that he's been pitching. It just feels as if anytime he's out there, it's not just a scoreless frame, but he's striking out the side, striking out 2 batters an inning. That's tough to beat. That's an unhittability that reminds me a lot of what Eric Gagne was showing in 2003. And again, that was controversial, but Gagne earned that Cy Young. So let's say fair. Let's give Miller a shot, makes Miller a shot to win this one.
You say fair. I will go foul, and not because what Mason Miller has been doing isn't anything short of sensational. Not because I think you could make a fair argument that Mason Miller might be the most underratedly valuable player for any team in the NL, but I'll go foul here just because I don't think that closers are viewed as nearly as valuable as they were 20 plus years ago, the last time we saw a relief pitcher win a Cy Young back in 2003. I also just don't think that there's anything that Mason Miller or any closer can do to be seen as more valuable, as more impactful, as high of a talent level, as important and valuable to their respective teams as Paul Skeens is to the Pittsburgh Pirates or Yoshinobu Yamamoto is to the LA Dodgers. So it's to take nothing away what Mason Miller has done, but I think when you're looking at the rest of the scope of the NL and how many great pitchers there are in the NL, I think that Mason Miller is just kind of climbing an uphill battle there. But so much more baseball to get into. We will take a look into our crystal balls coming up next as we look at Monday headlines today here on Yahoo Sports Daily.
Caleb Gordon, a very interesting situation. He's got a quarterback competition between Austin Mack, who's a guy he brought from Washington, who's been on Alabama's roster for 2 years, and Keelan Russell. Very interesting spring game as it looked like Russell was further along than Austin Mack.
Do you go get the message board analysis? That's my favorite, where it's like, on that completion, I'm going to tell you what, the spiral looked a little bit tighter. The scrutiny applied to these like skeleton drills. Oh, God bless April.
We're going to give you a name. You tell us whether it's a real college athlete or if our producers just made it up out of thin air. Okay, so collegian or concoction. The first one we'll give you is Fat Brooks. Now, for clarity, fat is P-H-A-T.
That is a concoction.
That's a collegian. He's a guard for Central Michigan.
Fat Brooks.
Fat Brooks, yes.
Cook sends it away. Josiah King takes it deep in his own end zone. King across the 10. King across midfield, beats Cook, and King gonna dance into the end zone. Touchdown.
Playing Russian roulette there. I mean, how many times are you gonna just kick right to him? Look at that. Who wants to run in front of that? That's 5'11", 220 pounds, and all thighs. I mean, no one's gonna try to go low on him.
I mean, in some of these clips, your ability to fight over screens, is this something that you had to learn over time, or is this something that you've always had?
I think that I naturally always was able to switch. I think that I've always naturally been quick on my feet. I just think more so like maybe like low tendencies or more so like low details, which I'm still working on. But I think that like, those little things that like makes the difference between a good defender and a great defender.
Houston, we've got a LeBroblem, and I love the way that we LeBroblem. The Lakers are going to go up 2-0 over Houston. Acuna Matata. There are no worries in ATL. I really hope that we're seeing this headline in October. By the way, whoever came up with Acuna Matata, I wish I could take credit. It wasn't me. One of our producers came up with that. Amazing job. That is awesome. But this is me saying that the Braves are going to have a 5-game lead on the rest of the NL East by the time we get to April 24th.
I don't know if Coley Harvey has a crystal ball, if he can see into the future. I don't know what in the world or how in the world you did that, but my goodness, nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
Nailed it. Yeah, just to make sure people understand, that was last Friday. The Lakers-Rockets series had not started. The Braves were up, I think it was a game and a half on the division at that time. Currently, they sit 5.5 up on the NL East, so I was right about that. And then, of course, the Lakers are up 2-0. I was right about that. The one that we did not show, which I will take full credit for, I will acknowledge at least, is that I did say that Arvell Reese was going to be the number one edge rusher taken in the draft last night. Of course, that did not happen. David Bailey ended up going before Arvell, but hey, that was one that we all kind of thought would take place. So I was this close to being 3 for 3. I don't know how it happened. I'm just, hey.
I appreciate your honesty and integrity. You didn't even have to bring that one up. We could have just buried that one, with all of the ones that you did get right. But I do appreciate your honesty there. But let's keep the good vibes going. Let's keep the good predictions and correct predictions going. Coley, what do your Monday headlines tell you today on this Friday?
On this Friday, my Monday headlines for next week are that Victor Wembanyama is going to return from concussion protocol, and he's going to drop back-to-back 40 pieces in games 3 and 4. So Wemby rises. He comes up off the deck and rises. What do you think?
Back-to-back 40 pieces. Ooh. I would, first of all, I would love to see it. It's a privilege to watch Victor Wembanyama play the game of basketball. He'll take it any chance we can possibly get. It's a quick return, though, and concussions can be so incredibly tricky. They can be so incredibly unpredictable. So it's not even just the availability of Victor Wembanyama that's a question mark, but the effectiveness of Victor Wembanyama. So, look, you've got a pretty great track record, so I am not in a position to disagree with you. But I think I might just have to. And I think I may just have to disagree with you so much because my Monday headline today will be that the Spurs-Blazers series will be tied at 2-2. And I will double down on that and say that I think the Blazers win this game tonight and that they go up 2-1 in this series. Because I look at this Spurs team, they're young, they're inexperienced, they're getting used to what expectations and pressure and the speed of the game in the NBA postseason feels like. And then they're going on the road and they're doing it with a question mark with Victor Wembanyama. I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't think that we can expect to see Wemby on the court tonight just because of the nature of concussions. If I'm the Spurs, if I'm Wemby, I approach this injury with massive amounts of caution. So I would expect to see Wemby on the bench tonight. I think that the Spurs drop this game tonight. I think the Blazers start to feel themselves. They're at home. They're up in this series. And then, bam, Wemby comes back for game 4. The Spurs tie it up. Spurs eventually win this series. But I think the Blazers are at least able to make some things pretty interesting in game 3.
I want to admit, I think the reason why I chose that is because when I saw that Victor Wembanyama was traveling to Portland ahead of game 3, the fact that he's traveling and making that long flight from San Antonio, that made me say, okay, I think he's not just going to play, but he's going to give it his all. He's going to actually show up. But I'm with you. That is a very, very short turnaround, especially when we're talking about matters of a head injury. This being said, we'll see what he's got. Maybe he's got a 20-piece. Maybe he's got a 30-piece. Either way, I do disagree with you that the series will be tied 2-2. I think we're going to see like a 3-1 scenario where the Spurs are going to be out in front and have a chance to close out when we get to the next part of next week. That's all we're going to say about the Spurs and Wembanyama. Let's go to my next one, which is Beck gone. Carson Beck will be the 3rd quarterback taken in the NFL draft. And before we go any further, I do actually also have to admit, I think I've changed my mind a little bit on this during this show. But I'm still going to stick with it right here. Carson Beck is going to be the 3rd quarterback taken after Ty Simpson and of course, Fernando Mendoza last night. What do you say?
I say no way, Jose. Look, and that does happen sometimes. Sometimes I'll have a take and then I'll sleep on it, and I'm like, man, I went a little bit too hard on that. Like, I don't know if I really wholeheartedly believe in it the same way that I felt maybe the night before. But I'm gonna say no way, Jose, here, because I think that Carson Beck is about as close to a finished product as you're going to get at his age and his experience level. And I don't think that that level is good enough to be a legitimate starting quarterback in the National Football League, enough to be the next quarterback taken. We talked to Stephen Godfrey earlier in the show. Check it out if you want to go back on the show. If you missed it, you can check it out on the Yahoo Sports YouTube page. But he mentioned how he thinks that Garrett Nussmeier is actually the second best quarterback in this draft, a better prospect at least than Ty Simpson. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a Garrett Nussmeier or a Drew Aller go ahead of Carson Beck. It is crazy to see the amount of smoke and the amount of momentum that Carson Beck has gotten over the past couple of days. Coley, I don't remember even mentioning Carson Beck's name over the last couple of months. Now we talked about him 3 or 4 times on this show. So it is crazy the work that media can do and the work that some of the behind the scenes hype you can get. I don't know if I see him going third, but see if you like this one. This is my next prediction. La lead. The Dodgers sweep the Cubs to take lone ownership of the top spot in the NL West. Now, I will acknowledge that I made this prediction before the Dodgers game against the Giants last night. I thought they were going to get swept by the Giants, or they're going to go into the series against the Cubs pissed off and angry and ready to make a statement. They did avoid the sweep. They did win game 3 against the Giants, but I still think that the Dodgers come out against the Cubs with the fear of the gods, the fire of the gods, and they are able to get the sweep against the Cubs this weekend. What do you think?
I really do like this one a lot. I do also have to disagree though, because I just can't see a sweep happening. The Cubs are too strong for that to happen. The Dodgers will certainly win this series. I do believe they're going to win this series, stay out front in the NL West by the time that we get done with this weekend. But the Cubs are a really good team. This is a Cubs team that has started to really take shape. They've faced the likes of the Phillies, so they've been facing some teams that they've been beating up on. That's the other thing about the Phillies we talked about on the last segment as well. They've been facing a lot of tough, talented teams so far. The Cubs twice already. The Braves are about to face twice. So the Phillies, part of their record is reflected in a little bit of who they're playing. But sticking with the Dodgers here, I really do like them. I like what it is that they're doing offensively. We talked also about the Cy Young contention a little bit ago. I know you talked about Yamamoto was a pitcher who should be in that mix. What about Shohei Ohtani as well? I mean, Ohtani just in 24 innings so far this season, he's got a 0.38 ERA. So, I mean, he is really wheeling and dealing himself. He's been virtually unhittable as well. So I like the Dodgers to take this series and to also hold on to the NL West lead, but I just can't see them sweeping the Cubs. The Cubs are a very strong team.
Well, I have to go big and bold. I can't just say the Dodgers are going to win the series. That's no fun.
And that's what I did with Carson Beck as well. We're going big and bold. That's what we do here at Yahoo Sports
Daily. You got to
Daily.
go big and bold. I'd rather be wrong and bold than correct and hesitant. But let's keep it in the game of baseball. What's another baseball prediction that you have for the weekend?
Yeah, one more for me is Munetaka Murakami. So the Chicago White Sox star, I'm predicting that he is going to have the Major League home run lead by next week. By the start of next week, Murakami will keep the mashing going. And I mean, he has already got 10 home runs. He's right there at number 2. I know going into last night, at least, Jordan Alvarez with 11 home runs. I'm predicting not just will Murakami get the Major League home run lead, we're going to see 13, maybe even up to 14. Because remember, he had a 5-game stretch just now where he was homering day in, day out, had a homer each game in 5 games this past week. So I'm going with Murakami to keep the mashing going. Let's see him get to 13 or 14 home runs. And, hey, maybe by the end of the year, maybe he's got the home run lead. He looks really good so far.
I love that from you. It got to the point, at least for me, that last night Murakami was the first game in 6 games that Murakami did not hit a home run. And I felt the same way that I feel about Jokic when he drops like 28, 15, and 7 and like falls short of a triple-double. I'm like, okay, scrub, bad night from you. And it's like, oh, Murakami didn't hit a home run. Like, ugh, lame, boring. And it's like he set such a high standard and such a high bar for himself. And I'm glad that you gave him some airtime and some acknowledgement. I don't think that Munetaka Murakami is a big enough story right now in baseball, but he is such a bright spot on a team that needs it, with a White Sox fan base that deserves a bright spot, deserves some positivity. So I love that call out from you. I will wrap it up with a final NFL draft take and NFL draft prediction. I think the Cowboys go receiver tonight. I think the Cowboys' next pick in the NFL draft is a wide receiver. The Cowboys addressed some much-needed defensive needs in the first round of the NFL draft. They get Caleb Downs falling to them with their first pick at the 11th pick. Mwah, loved that pick. They addressed edge later in the first round. But with all of the drama that we've heard about George Pickens, he hasn't signed the franchise tag yet. We heard Stephen Jones come out and say we are not interested in negotiating a long-term deal. I think the writing is on the wall. That George Pickens will not be a Dallas Cowboy, that we could perhaps see a tag and trade situation in the Dallas Cowboys, so they're going to have to address receiver. So I think that's where they go with their next pick in night 2.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. And this is also a draft where receivers are very plentiful. You know, we saw certainly a good number of very good receivers going there early in the first round. But as this second round begins to take shape, I think a few of the other receivers, Omar Cooper was a name that most people didn't think was going to go, for example, in round 1, and certainly that took place with the Jets. So I think we're going to see the Cowboys certainly get one of those receivers on day 2. Of course, they've got the 3rd round pick, the 92nd pick overall. That's who they will be picking tonight. And then the other picks for the Cowboys are tomorrow. So I'm with you. I think that somewhere in this mix, the Cowboys go with another receiver.
And some of these premier receivers remaining that maybe had late first, early second round grades, Denzel Boston out of Washington, Zachariah Branch out of Georgia, Chris Brazzell out of Tennessee, I think an underrated receiver in this draft. They're not going to be there at 92 for the Cowboys, but there's still going to be some really, big time names that can maybe not be elite number 1 wide receiver prospects, but that's not what the Cowboys need right now. You have CeeDee Lamb in the building. So whether it's a Deion Burks out of Oklahoma, a Jacoby Lane out of USC, or any of these other kind of day 2, early day 3 guys that could be remaining there for the Cowboys, I think that's definitely the direction that they go in.
I tell you, watch Chris Bell out of Louisville and also Elijah Sarrett out of Indiana. I think those are two pieces, two players who could be there in the 3rd round.
Elijah Sarrett, kind of that knuckles to Omar Cooper Jr. Sonic that we saw this past year at Indiana, no doubt. We've got some great action coming up this weekend in sports, so we're not just going to predict what happens this weekend. We're going to see if it's even worth watching in the only way that Yahoo Sports Daily can. Can't wait! Coming up next.
If somebody stops you on the street and they say, Dion, what's Joe Brady like? What do you tell them?
Just a dope, cool dude from Florida that loves ball, and he'll shoot you straight. He'll tell you what you need to, but he'll also laugh and tell a joke. And as a player, coach relationship, it's beautiful to have somebody that can turn it on and turn it off at any time.
What is going to happen inevitably in 6 months when you are tempted, when you have that itch, when the thoughts in the back of your mind say, you still got it. No one leaves on a winning streak.
That's what's going to happen.
Yes,
I know.
It's inevitable.
I've been around this sport long enough to know that that's what's going to happen. Is I would like to retire on a 4-fight win streak, then roll the dice, come back, get a loss, and then guess what happens? Then I'm going to get in this chase of wanting to get that loss back. And we see how that ends up for a lot of fighters.
What put you over the top to I want to go to Indiana?
I was really close to going to a couple other schools. However, the point that really cemented me into Indiana is Coach Ignetti really focusing on the development. His big selling point was, hey, I don't know, other schools are trying to sell you on if we're going to win a national championship, if we're going to win all these games. I just know one thing I can do is develop quarterbacks.
We have the fake handoff. Nate Davis rumbling, stumbling, bumbling, and then easy walking with a little bit of swaggy style in for a touchdown.
Yeah, the swaggy walk is as fast as his run. So that's what's...
Looked like maybe we were going to get a fake pick. Instead, wow, he is absolutely rolling, and now we have dueling quarterback runs all over the place.
So they always say that when you have guests, you need to be on your best behavior. So Coley, let me apologize in advance because this here segment of Can't Wait maybe isn't Yahoo Sports Daily on our best behavior, but it is now time to play a game that only we here on this show play. It is called Can't Wait, where we preview all of the events taking place this weekend. So if you're excited for a game and if this is something that you're going to be watching, that means it is a BART. That means you can't wait, and you will hear this sound effect.
Can't wait.
But if you are not excited for a game, then that is the opposite of a BART, which is, of course, obviously, a fart. So Josh, our producer, will play the sound effect. So I'm glad that we are all adults here.
Right.
I'm glad that we are all mature. And we can preview the action of the weekend in a very, adult way. So let's start here. Day 2 of the NFL draft. Coley, I will give you the honors. BART or fart? Day 2.
Oh, man. I'm scared to hear this sound, but I have to go fart on this one. So, yeah, that's not a great sound. It's only because, this is day 2 of a draft that, as we've mentioned, isn't the most attractive. I do certainly like the fact that all of these players have an opportunity to grow their careers, to take that next step to the next level. But as it goes in terms of the production that we're going to see from this draft class compared to, say, maybe last year's or even the next year's class, it just doesn't have the same pop. Part of the reason why I say that is because it just doesn't feel as if we're going to see any crazy trades or any crazy reaches. It just really feels like this is a draft where the status quo is going to happen. And that's exactly what we saw for the most part in round 1, where, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, teams basically drafted the needs that we all kind of assumed that they would need. And, and as we get into day 2, you start to get players who aren't necessarily going to pop right away. I do believe at some point in time, as you get a little bit deeper into careers, players will take over, players will show up, players will really come off the page who are day 2, day 3 picks. But with this class, I'm thinking that we're going to see a lot more patience exhibited with teams throughout the start of some of these players' careers. And again, I think we're going to see some of that patience exhibited throughout the draft itself here on day 2. So it's just not really going to be one of those days where, I can't see a situation like a Ty Simpson happen where all of a sudden we're like, wow, this guy who was slated to be at the end of round 3, all of a sudden is the first pick of round 2. I just don't foresee that particular thing happening. And so that's why I've got to go with the sound effect that I'm not really a fan of. What about you, Caroline?
It's a fart. Let's go. I never get used to it. Let's call a spade a spade. It is a fart. Day 2 of the NFL draft, I would say traditionally is kind of farty. There are some years where maybe quarterbacks fall or these big time names fall. Maybe there's character concerns. So these first round projected players, they fall to day 2. And sometimes that can breed some drama. But you just mentioned it. This year doesn't feel like the sexiest draft. It's because there's really only one quarterback in this draft that was viewed as an instant plug and play, instant impact franchise caliber quarterback. That's part of the reason why. I think that drafts are dictated by the quality of quarterback. Just pulled up ESPN's best available, and it is 3 consecutive DBs, including a safety out of Toledo, and Jermod McCoy, the corner out of Tennessee, who has big-time injury concerns. So it doesn't have that same level of star power that maybe we're accustomed to seeing on day 2. Now, with that being said, Yahoo Sports NFL draft coverage is a BART. So if you want to make day 2 of the draft fun, tune in right here on the Yahoo Sports Network. Jason Fitz and our entire squad of NFL gurus will have you covered with instant analysis, instant reaction to all of the picks on night 2. So that is a BART. But unfortunately, everything else, a little bit of a fart. All right, let's get into this. Lakers, Rockets, game 3, BART or fart?
Oh, man, I need my guy Bart Scott right here. Hey, I can't wait. There it is. I'll say it. I can't wait. No, this is seriously going to be a really exciting game. I'm looking forward to the rest of this series, seeing how it plays out, in large part because LeBron is doing LeBron things, which at 41 years old, we didn't anticipate this guy doing. I am so ecstatic to see just the way that he's been moving, the way he's been moving without the basketball, the way he's been elevating. I mean, it seems like he's been dunking like he was 21 years old or 31 years old, not 41. I mean, this guy is really adding to the entertainment value of this series. Of course, KD and the Rockets haven't really shown up. KD coming into this series with a little bit of injury intrigue. And then there is injury intrigue with the Lakers. I mean, we still don't really know if Austin Reeves or Luka Doncic might actually show up and appear in this game. And speaking of injury intrigue, there is a little bit more going on with Kevin Durant with this ankle sprain as he's questionable for Friday's game. I'm excited about it. You know, again, I'm just really pumped seeing the way that LeBron has shown up as vintage LeBron in the postseason, and I really can't wait to see this one.
I mean, LeBron himself is a Bart, obviously.
Can't wait.
Thank you. And the way that he's been playing, the way that 41-year-old LeBron has been playing like 21-year-old LeBron, like this is something that I think we're going to be telling our kids about one day. But if KD is not playing, this is a fart. It kind of was a fart in game 2 when Kevin Durant looked like a double agent and he was turning the ball over at an incredibly high clip. But I think that an intriguing storyline going into this game, if KD is in, is the bounce back that we see from KD, the revenge factor that we see from KD. Do we see a pissed off and fired up KD in game 3 after a brutal game 2 performance? But if he's less than 100%, or if KD isn't even on the court, this is a game that I think the Lakers should absolutely roll. Let's head to Atlanta. Your Braves, Coley. Braves, Phillies, two teams that I've heard love each other, support each other, love, supporting one another. Yeah, Braves, Phillies, Bart or fart?
It's an absolute Bart. We need to hear it.
Can't wait.
There it is. Can't wait indeed. No, I mean, we can't wait to hear it. We can't wait to see it, excuse me, in large part because this Braves team has just been rolling. It is going to be interesting to see whether it's a true series. As I mentioned earlier, the Phillies, having played the Braves once already and got dominated. They played the Cubs twice, got dominated by the Cubs. So it might not be the most entertaining series on paper, at least right now. But I'm not here for the entertainment factor. I'm here for let's get going and get the Braves to get the bats out, get to chopping, and get some wins here as they continue to extend their division lead. I'm not going to make a prediction that they're going to extend this to 8 games or something by the end of this series, but yeah, their division lead might grow quite wide once they get out of Philadelphia with this one. I'm all for it. Can't wait. Want to see what the boys do.
For you, I totally get it. Braves fan, you get to watch your team beat up on a divisional rival. Yeah, for Braves fans, 100% a Bart. But for all of us not in Atlanta or not Braves fans, this is a fart. I love the rivalry. I love what this game, this matchup stands for. I love a division rivalry, but the Phillies stink, and the Braves should absolutely sweep the floor with the Phillies. So for that, I'm going to say, no thanks. I think there's some more intriguing matchups and some more intriguing sporting events that we might see this weekend. One of those being the Starkville Derby. So I don't know if you are familiar with the Starkville Derby, Coley, but this is an absolute Bart for me. It is the world's largest wiener dog race. So that's 100% a Bart.
Can't wait.
Yes. Oh, that's going to be really cool. Yeah, I'm down for that. By the way, just real quick, I am glad that we had a full Atlanta show today. I was not expecting that at all today with Dan coming in and Steven coming in as well. Speaking of Derby, though, yeah, Dan, I don't know if Dan has this in mind as he's getting ready for the Derby, but yeah, that's pretty sweet. Even the dogs are dressing up like they're going to Churchill Downs. This is really sweet.
Because this is their Churchill Downs. This is their Super Bowl. This is their Academy Awards. This is their everything. And truly, this is my everything as well. Coley, if we're going to throw fart sound effects at you, the least that we can do is give you a little bit of hometown love. We will be back on Monday with a full reaction to all the action in sports. Thanks to Coley Harvey for hanging out with us today. We'll see you on Monday.